Welcome to Grandma Magic, a podcast from the Grandmother Collective. We are a nonprofit organization that supports and advocates for a world where a grandmother's power is seen, cultivated, and activated for positive change. The Grandma Magic podcast is an opportunity to learn more about the unique roles that grandmothers, aunties, and other older women around the world can play in advancing positive social development by talking to and learning from grandmother changemakers. We hope this series inspires you, brings you joy, and helps you recognize the enduring magic and wisdom that comes from grandmothers everywhere. My name is Lindsay Farrell, and I'm your host. Today, we are honored to welcome Sue Boardman, a perpetual learner whose path has woven together roles as a registered nurse, master of divinity, doctor of ministry, author, artist, activist, and intentional creativity teacher. With a background in pastoral counseling, coaching, and creative expression, Sue has spent decades guiding individuals and communities towards healing, growth, and self-discovery. She calls herself the fiercely compassionate rebel grandmother for rent, dedicated to helping people live their deepest dreams, even now. Sue's journey began as a single mother, determined to shape a meaningful life for herself and others. She spent 25 years serving the Presbyterian Church, USA, as a pastor and pastoral counselor, while also writing for Monday Morning Magazine and the Presbyterian News Service. Over the years, she has integrated a diverse set of skills from hypnotherapy and neurolinguistic programming to the Developing Capable People program, which she has led for more than 30 years. As life led her to embrace change, she found new creative avenues in writing and painting, authoring several #1 best-selling books, including Grandmothers Are in Charge of Hope and We Gather Together. Her work continues to uplift and inspire, particularly through her latest project, a children's book that reimagines an ancient story for a new generation. Thank you for joining me, Sue.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
I can't actually think of why we didn't get you earlier. I mean, grandmothers are in charge of hope. Absolutely.
Totally. And at this moment in time, somebody needs to be.
Yes. In charge of hope, in charge of leadership, in charge of building community, all the things that we really recognize are incredibly powerful about older women everywhere. Okay, so I didn't put this in our sort of pre-notes, but I really love asking people if they're going to leave something for their next generation. You're a grandmother. What is it that you want to make sure that you really pass down?
Wow, that's a big question. And I'm going to back up to before I was a grandmother for the answer to this. When I was 4 months pregnant, I left an abusive marriage. And trust me when I tell you, I had a whole bunch of things I needed to learn quick. One of the best of those things came from a guy named Steve Glenn, who wrote a book called Raising Self-Reliant Children. And I will never forget sitting on a gym floor with about 3,000 young adults learning Steve's stuff, college gym. And Steve said that if a teenage child has 5 adults who will listen to them, take them seriously, and not shame or blame them for their questions, that child is practically immune from ever attempting suicide. And that's where it all started for me.
It's so powerful. So you basically use that initial, I'm rough, I'm navigating trauma, I'm navigating new motherhood, which is in and of itself like kind of a trauma as we sort of shift our social role and take on this new identity. And amidst all of that, you said, I'm going to be one of those adults for young people.
I did. And one of the first things I learned about that was that if I was going to do that for other people, I needed to be able to do that for me. I needed to be one of those 5 people for me. That's kind of been a cornerstone of not only my own learning, but my teaching.
And has been informing what you've done. So you are, as many of the women that I interview, kind of a mosaic. You've built yourself a life that clearly is one of purpose and focused on personal and community connection. Along this journey of nursing, ministry, creativity, contemplation, what has been connecting those things for you? And can you walk us through some of the decision making that you had?
Let me start by telling you how I got out of nursing.
Okay. Not into it.
Not into it. Into it was because it was handy and quick and I could feed my kid. Out of it was because I got tired of getting told I didn't get paid to think. And yeah, this was in the dark ages, back in the day when all the docs were men and all the nurses were girls. And yeah, I got tired of getting told I didn't get paid to think. And one day the little light bulb went off above my head and I said, the next right thing has got to be soon. And I went back to school to finish my bachelor's degree. And one of the first things I learned at Eckerd College in Florida, in the first course I took, was an old Quaker saying that in order to learn, we must be willing to be changed. And after that, I wound up at seminary, much to my huge amazement. And it's kept evolving from there in the sense of me being more me and me learning more ways to help other people be more who they are. And then one day my kid called and told me I was going to be a grandmother. And everything got different, bigger.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Explain that. What does that mean that it got bigger?
Well, I had been doing a workshop at a local church on a Sunday afternoon with 5 women friends of mine. We were actually making quilts for small children that were in difficult situations. And we came home, we're sitting around, we're singing Peter, Paul, and Mary on the living room floor and all that sort of jazz. And the phone rang, and my son was calling from Scotland. And we, hi, how you doing, for a little bit. And then Dave said, Mama, you're going to be a grandmother. And I didn't say anything at all.
No, you had no expectation of that?
Oh, no, this was a total surprise for all of us.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And my whole world got a whole lot bigger and also closer in that moment. And everything's been different since then. A whole new perspective for me. And things that I didn't used to think were important got a whole lot more important. One of the things that the kids needed was some healthy baby things that weren't available to them in Scotland. So I was in charge of taking those. But we had a long distance baby shower and my mom was there and my sister and a bunch of old friends and stuff. And what Kelly, my daughter-in-law, asked for was baby books and music. Because, you couldn't take a crib on the plane to Scotland. So we did that. And just even the process of picking out baby books and a James Taylor lullaby CD, the way I made the choices was totally different.
Than when you were a mother?
I didn't have time to make choices when Dave was a baby. Realistically, obviously I did. But I had learned a lot more in between there. And making choices for this little person that nobody had ever met yet, and thinking about what I hoped she would soak up when she listened to those stories and the music, and it was a really, really different perspective.
Do you feel like it's like a different responsibility too?
Yes. And for me, at least, it was in the sense that I could focus more on making those choices because I wasn't working quite so hard to survive as I had been, when my son was born.
So at that personal level, you felt the change, you felt the transition, you felt the whatever it is that grandmotherhood brings. You're not the first to have shared this with me. But did anything shift in what you were doing for your career or how you were spending your days?
I was doing mostly pastoral counseling at that point in time. A couple of rocking chairs and cups of tea and sorting things out. And I kept doing that.
It sounds pretty grandmotherly, actually.
Imagine that. I might have been in training.
You were already in training, yeah.
Yeah. But it was along about that same point in time that there's a guy named Fred Buechner, who was an author and theologian and really cool sort of guy who's gone on at this point in time. But Fred said that the place where we are called is where our deepest joy and the world's deep longing meet. And I think I knew that before I found out I was going to be a grandmother, but I think I understood it and owned it much more deeply at that point. And most of what I have done since then has been that.
Looking for that intersection of what makes you joyful and what are the kind of gaps around you.
Not only looking for it, but helping myself and lots of other people to claim it and then to figure out the path from where we are now to where that place is. And that's a great deal of the work that I do.
Can you give like a example of what taking someone on that journey looks like, or what that might have looked like for you?
I think the first big step is claiming some provisional notion of where that place might be. And of course, when you factor in the world's deep longing, it gets complicated through time. So here you are, wherever it is that we're sitting today, and there's that place over there that you really feel called to be, because not only does it matter to you, but it matters to the world. And in my case, the world that your grandkids are growing up in, which is the big one for me. How do you get from here to there? In the land of intentional creativity, where I learned to paint and so forth, we have a metaphor called medicine basket. And everybody has their imaginary medicine basket. And as you go along the path, you learn new tools to put in your medicine basket. And I have lots of those. My medicine basket is approximately the size of a semi-truck these days.
Hey, that's just that grandma wisdom that you've been collecting for decades.
For a while. Some of those things are artistic expression, storytelling. My two grandmothers, when I was growing up, were wonderful, delightful human beings who loved me and my sister to death. My mother's mother was the food and games grandma. She was tons of fun, and the big joke in the family was she taught us to play card games and kept our pennies when we lost.
She was teaching you a lesson. Yeah.
She was.
Yeah, that's smart.
My dad's mom, for me, was the story grandma. And she's the one I tend to call on most often these days. So stories are a big medicine in my basket. I also learned a lot of stuff like neuro-linguistic programming and Ericksonian hypnosis and blah, blah, yada, yada. And the bottom line on all of that is that we all experience the world differently, though nobody told us that in biology class, at least not back in the day. And when we can help people to understand that and claim it and put that as medicine in their basket, then there aren't so many people running around all the time feeling like they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Which means that then you actually get stuff done.
Because you're not putting barriers up because you...
Yes.
Yeah, because you're feeling like, why is everybody else able to do it this way? And I can't seem to put my shoes on in the right order or whatever it is. Yeah.
Well, one of the big examples for me is that I am not inherently a visual person. There are no pictures in there, or there didn't used to be any pictures in there. And when I dream, it's more like hearing a story than it is watching a movie, and has been all my life. The deeper I get into the image making, the more access I get to images in my head. And some people, there's the visual stuff and the auditory digital stuff and the kinesthetic, which is feelings and movement. And everybody has different ways they process things. And if only you can help people to claim that, the world gets much, much bigger.
Does it also get more empathetic?
Yes, absolutely. And I've gotten to the point these days where I've been painting a while now. There's a lot of paintings at my house. And there are specific ones that hang on the wall in the bedroom because they talk to me in my sleep. This is true. At least it's my true experience. And when I wake up in the morning, very often there's an answer to whatever it is I was trying to solve when I went to bed, or a new idea about, how to move forward in the book I'm writing, or whatever. And that was all very much a part of writing that first children's book. I had no idea I could do that and paint all the illustrations, and no clue that was possible for me.
And you're saying because you were able to paint and then surround yourself with it, that you were able to unlock something in yourself?
Because I've been able to get comfortable with all of my processing patterns and access the one I need in the moment, then yes, many more things are possible for me. And this is true for everybody who will take the chance on learning that kind of thought process.
So is this what you're describing, what I've read from you, as metacognitive drawing?
It is totally related to that.
Okay, so what is that?
Metacognitive drawing is basically thinking while moving a pen on a piece of paper or a marker. So that's all three primary processing patterns working at once. Because you're watching the pen move and you're thinking the words and you're feeling the movement. And I know this sounds bizarre if you haven't done it yet, but if you're thinking about a particular question and you're just moving the pen and watching it, very, very often a new aha appears. Then you have to figure out what to do with it. It's not like all the problems are solved in the moment. But one of my clients, we were doing this one day, and she said to me that the metacognitive thing helps my brain stop being obsessive compulsive about the problem or emotion or whatever, and allows me to see myself and my issues from all the angles.
It helps her get over herself.
Yeah, a lot of us learned to just eat a couple dozen chocolate chip cookies while we were, wrapped around the axle about not knowing what to do next. Metacognitive drawing has some advantages over that. I'm not dissing chocolate chip cookies, but
we don't need as many as we would like to eat in moments of stuckness.
Well, no, and there are other ways to get there that can be really helpful. And then the aha moment, when it comes, is both intensely liberating and also extremely encouraging. Because then, if you got the aha for this step on the path, that makes it entirely more possible that there'll be an aha for the next step too. And you're not actually out there on the road all by yourself.
I think I get it. I think it's basically saying that it's setting you up to feel confident that you're going to get to an answer or that a solution will emerge. Sometimes people really want like a template or a framework, right? They talk about frameworks. And so that sort of like helps them feel like there's like a cheat.
Well, and there kind of is. I'm getting ready to teach a class that is nicknamed Filters. It's a model of human perception that is kind of like a cheat, but it's more like a map that you set out and you get so far down the road and then you get a new question and then you adjust a little bit for the new question and you keep going. But you've learned enough to know that that's normal and hang with it, which is the part that's really exciting for me.
So would you say that you're helping people navigate change?
Yes. And I'm also helping people navigate having and claiming desires in the middle of chaotic change.
I mean, it's so relevant right now. I think a lot of people, it sort of feels to me that I'm going to bring it back to your medicine kit or your medicine box, that a lot of people don't have inside their medicine kit or toolbox or whatever ways to explain uncertainty, ways to filter through misinformation. Like somewhere along the way, I don't know what's caused it other than like claiming social media or some, or capitalism or something. Like I could come up with some like meta narratives, but it does seem to be that we really seem to be having an epidemic of people lacking those skills.
Can I give you an example? One of the things in the filters model is the beliefs that we carry around, many of which are non-conscious. And Carl Jung would tell us that the first belief that any of us develop is that in order to survive, we have to keep the tall people happy. And I mean, think about an infant. In order to survive, you got to keep the tall people happy. So we're all carting that around, and it's not conscious for most of us until it is. Hallelujah.
What part's the hallelujah? That it's unconscious or that
that it gets conscious?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of those beliefs start out with we always or we never. And one of the examples in my family, the cooking and game grandma, you had 3 kinds of cookies for Christmas every year, or the world would end.
Yeah. Oh, no, I got grandma like that.
Yeah, the little cookie press butter cookies that I absolutely loved. Something called pecan crunch cookies, which were really good but harder to make. And then fruitcake cookies.
With like the candied cherries on it. Oh.
Yeah, and you had to have those.
Even if no one ate them.
Exactly. And my mother was a huge believer in you had to do it the way Grandma did it. That's how you survived. So when I was about 10, we moved to Florida. And it's a lot hotter in Florida at Christmas time than it is in the Midwest. So Mom made fruitcake cookies because you gotta. And nobody ate them. And about 3 months later, she found them like all moldy in the cupboard, which was gross. And it still took her 3 more years to quit making fruitcake cookies.
Right.
I mean, they were expensive. They were a pain in the butt, and nobody wanted to eat them. But we always made fruitcake cookies. And that's how we knew we were going to survive, because we had survived that far. I mean, you and I are sitting here talking about cookies. Editing beliefs is a whole lot of how we get from where we are to that place where we feel called to be.
I think about my own upbringing where I had lots of nevers and always, but then I left and I've spent 25, almost 30 years apart from my people who taught me the always and the never. And they're over here now. And I went on a journey and like little pieces of me just continued to shift. And I know I'm not the only one, right? We aren't living in these units where we're always and never anymore. Diversity and experience and other things.
And what if we're going to imagine for a moment some of those people from back in the always and never days could come and gather around a holiday table and celebrate and enjoy each other and accept each other with their variations on always and never. And we didn't have to stay gone for 20 or 30 years. But what if there was a third choice, which is, here's what I believe, and here's where it works. In other places for a couple days it doesn't work so well, but it's like there's always, there's never, and there's sometimes, which to me at least is better than just always and never.
Or both and. I see some people playing with this both and idea. How do we really interrogate and blow up the binaries that we've built up? So you do this at an individual level with folks. How does sharing this knowledge, getting more people to experience, recognizing and understanding perception, how do we do that at scale?
Well, Zoom is very helpful.
Great. Wonderful times we're living in, right?
Yeah. I actually have a 4-week-long course coming up shortly. First time in that particular community. And we're going to get on Zoom and learn the things. And I've done this before. And the cool thing is you paint the whole map as underlayers of a painting. And then the top layers that people would see when they saw it hanging on your wall is filled with symbols of this place where you long to be.
And that the world is longing for? We're going back to that thing?
Yes. And so that's one answer. You get people in a room and you teach a class. The other one is, I know this is going to freak you out, but you write a book.
It doesn't freak me out.
I'm teasing.
Do you know how many people I've interviewed that have written a book? It's making it seem like very possible to write a book. I should write a book.
You should. I have. It's big fun. And I'm actually writing the book that goes with all this filtery kind of stuff and all the important things I've learned. And can I tell you the title? The Art of Overcoming Obstacles.
Very important today. That's literally what I was just saying. Is like we are with a lot of humans who sort of seem to shut down when like something changes in their lives. They've lost the ability to respond.
I mean, if your alwayses and your nevers don't get you where you want to be, you got to put something else in the medicine basket.
And you've said all of this without mentioning a political figure. It's just reality for all of us that this is important.
Well, yes. And the fact that I used to be a Sunday morning preacher has given me practice at reframing.
Yeah. So are you done with being a minister? Is that work finished?
I had knee surgery 6 times in 9 years. It's way too many times to be able to show up every Sunday morning and stand up and have something to say. And so I kind of shifted from being the preaching person to being more the pastoral counselor person. And it's a better fit for my particular path. And given the political context I hadn't mentioned, it's probably a better idea for me at the moment. And that's okay.
There's so many ways to make impact in the world.
Yeah. And one of those ways is to be with somebody in something that matters deeply to them in a context where they can actually ask questions and stop and think about new things. And you don't have to be done because we have to beat the Episcopalians to the yacht club for lunch.
Is that what's happening?
It used to. I was part of a church in Florida, and they had church at 10:45 on Sunday morning, which I thought was very bizarre. And I asked the pastor, what's up with this? And this is on a lake in Florida, and there were 2 big churches on this lake and a yacht club. And it's like, well, we have to beat the Episcopalians to the yacht club.
So we end at 11:45 and they end at 12 or something?
Yeah. And that was one of those half fun, full serious kind of things, yes. But it's easier to just say, here's my calendar, stick your name on there and we'll do a thing.
And I think probably opens you up to probably more unexpected connections.
I will say, though, that I'm in conversation about teaching some of this stuff. If I had a decent shoulder, I could throw a rock from where I'm sitting and hit the seminary I graduated from. I mean, it's like 2 miles down the road. And we are in conversation about doing some of this work there.
Oh, good. Yeah, university or educational space. That's amazing. Okay, so, this thread that we've kind of been weaving across this journey you've been on and this work you've been doing is rooted in what you've described as fierce compassion. What does this mean? How do people cultivate this?
Can I tell you how I first learned the term?
Sure.
When I was writing my first book, I was actually doing some work with the author and artist Sark. And so Susan and I were in just the 2 of us Zoom meeting one day. And she said, will you play a game with me? It's like, sure. And she busted out her deck of Mother Mary Oracle cards. Trust me when I tell you we did not cover Oracle cards in seminary. Not so much on the Mother Mary thing either. Yeah. Anyway, so
not at your seminary, at least.
Yeah, exactly, where I was. So Susan's out there in Portland or wherever, and she's doing the thing, passing the cards through her hands. And she said, just tell me when to stop. You'll know. And so it's like, sure. So she did the thing, and I said, stop. And she pulled out this card. It was number 6, Our Lady of Dark Mysteries. And Susan was reading this to me, all the various kinds of this. And in there was the phrase fierce compassion. And it's like game changer.
Was it explained on the card, or did you have to kind of define it for yourself?
It said more about it, but compassion always sounds like kind of one of those, smile and pat people on the head and say, oh, I so hope it gets better. But when you add in that notion of fierce, like, I'm going to help you fight for what you need. I'm going to get really brave for my introverted self and speak out about some of this stuff. The whole notion that, compassion isn't just everybody sitting around holding hands, though that's fine. That's good. But it's also action and change.
I was just going to say, it's active. Yeah. That's what I've always had this problem with sympathy and empathy, right? Sympathy is it's like a nothing. It's just like feeling sorry for people. That's useless. But empathy is active. It's like making yourself sort of feel uncomfortable in order to support someone else.
Yes. And then I would say that fierce compassion is the next thing down the road from empathy.
It's the next step.
And as it happened, Shiloh Sophia McLeod, who is the mama bear in the land of intentional creativity, did the illustrations for the Mother Mary Oracle cards. And so from Susan introducing me to the cards, I ended up meeting Shiloh, and I ended up painting, and so on and so forth. And that moment literally was the beginning of my having access to all of this stuff that's actually useful.
Because you took that one piece and it spoke to you in such a way.
It changed a filter.
Yeah, it changed the filter.
It changed a filter for me.
So Sue, before we leave, do you want to share a little bit about how all of this journey led you to this children's book? And you're not done. Obviously, you're going to continue to write forever. That's also your medicine in your medicine kit. But you kind of talked about like being able to see differently in order to make a children's book. But do you want to share a little bit more about the book and what your plans are for it?
There's a lot of stuff going on in our world these days and in the news around us about who's doing it right and who's not, and who counts and who doesn't, and whose stories are true and whose aren't. And the book is literally a creation poem. I wanted a story for small children that they could feel included in a larger spiritual tradition than perhaps some of the ones they might have encountered in this world. And James Weldon Johnson was an African-American poet back in Reconstruction times, right after the Civil War. And he wrote the original version of this poem. As it happened, it just hit the public domain when I was looking for a book to write. But what I did was I took very carefully the language and the illustrations in this book to try to make it so that any child who wanted to be included in that story could be. It's very definitely a read aloud book, and the divine creator in that book is both masculine and feminine, and the human-ish images in there, some of them have like blue faces, and I just did the very best I know to make that book a place where every child could feel welcome.
That totally fits the trajectory of this life that you've led, and reminds me, when you were sharing about having to pick out stories for the children that were to be your grandchildren. You did know that too often. Actually, maybe our stories are creating nevers and have-tos, and you were trying to create something different?
Yeah, something much bigger that people could feel like it was their story too.
Not something that's an other, but
yeah.
And what's the feedback been?
It's going real well.
Mm-hmm. Are you doing book talks? What are you doing?
Well, I got off to a slightly slow start on that with some kind of health challenges going on. But the events that I have done so far, my 8th grade English teacher came to my online book launch. It was totally mind-boggling. And the really exciting part is that Kathy really gets it.
She planted a seed in you, I'm sure, in 8th grade.
She did. She's the one who first notion in my head that I could write. And she donated a copy of the book to her church. Ripples in the pond is where we are at the moment. We haven't made it clear to the ends of the earth, but there are definitely new ripples in the pond.
And if anybody wanted to find this book and your other books, they go to your website or?
The information is on the website. There's also a link to my Shopify store, which is fierceartwithheart.com.
fierceartwithheart.com. And your other website, SueBoardman.com.
Yes.
Okay. We'll put all of this in our show notes and in other things that we do.
There's book stuff and art stuff and, all that kind of thing.
So that people can find this book and experience it and feel included.
They can. And I actually have some copies of the book in stock at my house. And so if people hurry up and get one while I still have them in stock, they can have them hand autographed. And yeah. So we had to have fancy thick paper for the book because of all the art that's in it, so that it doesn't bleed through from the other side. And one of my favorite comments on the book that I got was from a young woman with some neurodiversity issues. And she said, I love the art, I love the story, it's fabulous. And she said, but it feels so good. I mean, the cover and the pages and everything have a very kinesthetic, welcoming thing to them, which I didn't even know was possible, and I did it.
Yeah, now you're going to make sure all your books feel good.
Oh, for sure.
But the economics of children's books is pretty crazy. Like board books cost so much, and then there's a whole world of learning to do.
There's a lot of learning to do.
So is there another children's book in you, or are you going to...
Oh, there's one that's half in and half out at the moment.
Okay. All right.
And it's going to be another inclusive adventure, this time in answering big questions.
So where did we come from? Who are we now outwardly? How do we start to ask big questions?
Well, yeah. And one of these questions was a gift to me from an author that I adore. Her name is Kathleen McGowan. She called me up one day and she said, I need a book, and so I think you should write one. And the question that she had, is she has, elementary school age grandkids, was one of the kids came home from school one day and said, "Why is everybody so mad about Jesus?" That's one of the questions that's in this book.
Oh my gosh, my daughter would love that book. She would love it because those are the questions she comes home and asks. Not why is everybody mad at Jesus, but really big questions that sometimes are incredibly hard to deal with.
Yeah. One of my previous paintings has volunteered to be the grandmother figure in this book, and she's going to answer questions like that.
Oh, Sue!
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for embedding grandmother wisdom into these things, or grandmother's spirit and presence into the things that you're doing.
Well, gotta.
Yeah, we need it.
I have 2 granddaughters growing up in this world.
We need to make it better for them.
Which is a pretty big challenge.
It feels insurmountable sometimes.
Yeah.
But then I talk to grandmas and I feel better. And I'm being 100% serious.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. And I think, okay, I could get up tomorrow and keep going and keep trying. And we keep focusing on the things we can control.
And one of the things I try really hard to help people think about is not what's every step of the way from where I am to where it is that I want to be, but what's the next right thing.
I got that advice one time. Not the right thing, but I think that right's better. But she was talking about like a career journey. And she said, you just take the next best thing. There's no perfect. Like I've had a lot of twists and turns, and it's really been like, this feels like the next right or next best thing. That's a great advice. All right, let's end on that advice.
Let's end on that advice.
Let's pick the next right thing. Do the next right thing. All right. Thank you so much, Sue. I have just enjoyed getting to know you and chatting with you and learning about all that you're trying to put out into the world.
Thank you so much. This is my absolute joy.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Grandma Magic. We hope you were inspired by today's conversation with Sue Boardman and gained new perspectives on creativity, storytelling, and the power of living with intention. If you're passionate about uplifting the wisdom and leadership of older women, we invite you to get involved. Follow the Grandmother Collective on social media to stay connected and explore more stories of changemakers around the world. You can also participate in our storytelling initiatives, share your own stories through our Substack publication, engage in discussions in our writers groups and book clubs, and join our monthly storytelling circle to add your voice to the collective wisdom. And don't forget to subscribe to Grandma Magic wherever you listen to podcasts, so you won't miss future episodes filled with inspiration, insight, and the magic of grandmothers shaping the world. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.